All right, so this is gonna be part two of our series on anxiety and depression, but this one we're gonna be looking at glucose homeostasis. So how do we end up in insulin dysregulation? So we are gonna start with a signal. So we are gonna call this our fed state. So right after we eat a meal, our brain through the signaling through our hypothalamus is gonna tell our pancreas, so this is gonna be our organ up here, our pancreas is going to send a signal to our beta cells, and these are the cells that produce our insulin. So we end up producing our insulin, and this is going to then hopefully get us down to a level of normal range. So we call normal range 70 to 90. So someone starting with, say, they just ate a meal, their blood glucose gets up to about 120. Hopefully, then they can get somewhere in between about 70 to 90. But looking at that, so then we're going to have if we're in a fasted state where we have fasted for several hours, then we're going to have a little different effect here where our hypothalamus is going to signal the production of our glucagon. So this is produced through the alpha cells, and this will help to raise our blood glucose. So we're fasting for a decent amount of time. We want to get that blood glucose up in this situation. But the problem we run into is someone that has insulin dysregulation is going to be at a blood glucose somewhere that could be even at 180. So if they're at 180, they're not able to run through this top loop only once. So they may see a very large top loop and a very small one. So this can end up having effects on how we are regulating our blood glucose and the system that we're using over and over. This ends up having an effect on the receptors that insulin is binding to. And this overuse of receptors like a lock and key. So you're turning the lock and key over and over, you're jamming it in there. It's going to end up having problems. And as we'll see moving on, this problem can then end up having an effect on how we're regulating this consistently and have an effect on the sorbitol pathway, which I'll talk about a little later. But it can impact our mental health also because we have an increased glucose in the blood. It's a sorbitol release, and this it causes ruminating thoughts and problems like anxiety and depression. So we'll talk a little bit more about cortisol, but at this point, just know that increased glucose in the blood for over a long period of time can have an impact on our cortisol cycle.